My name is Theron, and on April 21st, last Thursday, I was arrested and charged with disorderly conduct because I merely asked the white male officer why he was requesting my license, sir. There was also a black male officer on the scene. The black male officer was on the left hand side of my car. The white male officer was on the right hand side of my car. After asking why he was requesting my license, sir, I was told that he didn't have to explain anything to me and that I just needed to follow his lawful order and give him my license or I would be arrested. At that moment, my left car door and my right car door swung open simultaneously. Then the white male officer on the right hand side came to the left hand side of my car and proceeded to pull me out of my car while it was still in drive. At the moment that they realized my car was still in drive, they reached over to pull it in park. I was then placed in handcuffs and put in the back of the squad car of the black male officer. I watched as both officers opened the two remaining car doors as I have a 4-door car and searched my car. I saw the white male officer pull my purse out of my car. My cell phone and my wallet were in my right hand as I was placed in handcuffs and while I was sitting in the back of the squad car. The moment that the black male officer closed the door, I made a phone call to my stepmother to alert her as to what was going on. Then the male officer came back to the car, opened the door, took my cell phone and my wallet. After that, he put it in the front with his things, got in the car, buckled his seatbelt. I remained unbuckled the entire time while I was being transported from the scene to South Haven Police Department. Upon arriving at South Haven Police Department, the handcuffs were removed and I was placed in a cage. I requested a phone call. That request was denied. At this time, I witnessed two other males who were also sitting in cages being allowed to use their cell phone as well as the phone in the precinct to make phone calls. I was asked several questions by the black male officer initially on the scene and another white male officer who was in the precinct. Jokes were being made as to me being ignorant, uneducated, looking and sounding stupid because I refused to answer any questions. I was invoking my rights. And I stated that I would not be answering any questions as I had not been read my Miranda rights. I was told I didn't have any rights at that time and that Miranda rights were not necessary. 20 to 30 minutes later, I was allowed to make a phone call inside of that precinct. That phone call was made to my stepmother. Shortly after that, I was transported back in the same squad car that I initially came in with the same black male officer driving from South Haven Police Department to DeSoto County Jail. Again, the first thing the black male officer did was buckle his seatbelt. I remained in the back of the squad car, handcuffed, without a buckled seatbelt. This time I was transported going 55 south at least 70 miles per hour down the interstate. If the officer had hit a speed bump, been rear-ended, or in any type of vehicular accident, I would have been injured as well. Police being allowed to do this and get away with it, this has to stop. Upon arriving at DeSoto County Jail and going through processing and booking, I was placed in a holding cell where I was allowed to make several phone calls. I was there several hours past the time that my bail was posted and told that was because a school group was allowed to tour that evening. Even once I was allowed to be processed out and begin to sign paperwork, I then asked where the remainder of my property was. The property in question was money. I informed the officer that I could not sign this paperwork saying that I had received all my property because that would be untrue. I was then told that I had an attitude because I requested to know where my property was, and at that time I was placed back in holding by another officer. I then made more phone calls to my mentor and my parents to alert them as to what was now happening. Now I was being refused the ability to be processed out because I had requested the rest of my property. This has to stop. Because I made those several phone calls and proceeded to stare out the window of the holding cell at that time for the next 15 minutes, I was then removed from that holding cell and placed into isolation. The reason for being placed into isolation is still unknown to this day. 15 minutes after being placed in isolation, an older female officer proceeds to lift up the cover on the window. She stated to me that she didn't know anyone was in there. This has to stop. Placing inmates or detainees or persons in holding without knowledge of the entire staff is unacceptable. This has to stop. If I had passed out, if I had hit my head, if anything had happened to my body, no one would have known besides the officer who initially placed me in there without reason. This has to stop. Luckily, she was willing to check on the reason that I was in there and find out what was going on. 15 minutes after that, another white male officer came to the isolation window. He stated that I looked pissed. I responded, "You have no idea." I eventually processed completely out and was allowed to leave. Upon receiving the police report just a few days ago, I noticed that only one officer's name was listed in the police report. That was the black male officer. The white male officer's name was listed nowhere in the police report. This is a major discrepancy. There were several other discrepancies in this police report. This can't possibly be allowed to happen. This has to stop. I've done the research to find that I am not the only one who has had this issue with officers in South Haven Police Department. This has to stop. This video is happening because I am one of the lucky ones that made it out alive. Anything could have happened to me and no one would have known. Unfortunately, people like Sandra Bland and Freddie Gray died under similar circumstances. This has to stop.